welcome. Ziggy1X here with another NieR reincarnation video, and I'm going to make this another addition to my ultimate beginner guide. This is a good opportunity to talk about this, and also I was asked by a new/returning player to go into details about this. Best ways to build teams, who should I be chasing, things like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this ultimate beginner guide video. We're going to talk about karma. We're going to talk about all of the sources of power that contribute to our account. And we are also going to talk about team building. So first of all, I would like to start this by talking about team building. And I think that that's a very important place to start, because the first thing you do when you come into a game like this is you want to know, who do I pull? Who do I chase? What should I build? Your resources are limited. You don't exactly know which way to go. You open up this brand new game, or a game you haven't played in a year or so, and it's a very different kind of game. And so this is going to be a guide to ease you along with that. With the introduction aside, let's go ahead and talk first about team building. Okay, so team building. We have 3 slots in our team. One of these almost always should have a DPS in it. This is going to be your damage dealer. The next slot, depending on the kind of content you're getting into, and this is going to be increasingly more important as your content, the challenge of your content increases, you're going to need a healer of some kind. And then the third slot becomes something that is a variable slot. This is going to be, if you need more damage, it's going to be either another DPS or someone who contributes to the damage of your DPS. If you're having a difficult time surviving in the fight, then you're going to need someone who increases your team's survivability. So this is, for example, that's a perfect example of Summer Yuri, who just absolutely increases your team's survivability across the board. But what kind of DPS are we looking for? Well, these days we have an elemental specialist in every element, multiple elemental specialists in every element. On the festive banners right now, we currently have Theo, Noel, and Gale. Each of these is a specialist, an exceptional damage dealer in their own right for each of their respective elements. We also have the survey banner still currently running, which also has excellent DPS units in elemental specialist roles. Almost all of them, except for water, is covered. A2 being the weakest, as she is tied to fire, but she's also very dated in her character skill damage output. So what are we looking for in a DPS? Well, we're looking for something that is tied to an elemental affinity. Let's talk a little bit about Gale. Gale's an important character because what does she do? Well, she has a whirlwind passive, pursuit. Okay, so this is in her passive slot. It's a pursuit bonus. It's a 50% damage multiplier. So after everything's added up, then you multiply that damage by 50%. It's a big chunky buff. And it's a pursuit passive, which is excellent because the only thing it's contingent on is number of chains. So if you exceed the number of chains, it's 2, 3, 4, whatever it is, then once you get past that point or you meet that threshold, then everything you do is doing that extra 50% damage. What does her character skill do? Well, it has a base multiplier, it has 5 hits, and then it also adds additional damage or multiplies additional damage because of it being a wind primary weapon. So if Festive Gale, is using a wind primary weapon, then her damage is going to increase significantly because of that, but also there's going to be an added effect in there that increases the damage that she does based off of pursuit. So for example, if you start an attack chain with her character skill, and then you add pursuit, then you finish up with the weapon skills, for example, her 1 and 2, what will happen there as a result is that her weapon skills will do significantly more damage because the character skill, firing it off first, gave her even more pursuit in her kit, which increases the damage that those do, making it much easier to damage cap with the character skill and then come close to or damage cap with the skill 1 and 2 from the weapons. So this is the kind of thing you want to think about. This is the kind of specialist character you want to be thinking about for your DPS. There are also generic DPS characters like Celebratory Yuri and Alternate 2B. These are characters that are not tied to any one element to do their maximum damage from their character skill, but instead rely on other conditions that need to be met. So that's what we're talking about DPS. Healer. What kind of healer are we looking at? Well, the new generation of healer that started with Yuletide Gale is a heal over time effect, meaning that 4 to 5 actions, not turns, but actions, that healer will heal your whole team every action, meaning that if you fire off the heal before an enemy does their chain of attacks, then every time the enemy hits you, you will also heal while they're hitting you. It significantly increases your survivability. Another thing that these healers do is they sometimes have debuffs to the enemy, sometimes they have buffs to your team. Depending on the healer that you're using, they'll have different effects that come with them. The versatile type is basically if you need to do more damage, like I said, you're going to put a character in there or a weapon or something along those lines that increases the amount of damage your DPS does, or a second DPS. It really depends on the kind of content you're doing, but as you get into more difficult content, you're typically going to want to have a more well-rounded party. So those are the specific roles you're going to be looking for. Okay, so this is also, by the way, what kind of costumes you're going to be looking for. Focus on those elemental DPSs once you've kind of gotten everything else flushed out, and start building out your roster that way. It's going to make the more challenging content significantly easier. Okay, so let's take a look here. When choosing a costume to chase, consider first the character's skill, then the passives, as well as if the costume needs to be awakened to rank 3 to really unlock its full potential. Why do I say this? Well, because you need up to 6 copies of a character to fully unlock the character to get their debris. But to get to the Awakening 3, you need the first that you pull, and then you need 3 copies after that, meaning a total of 4 to get to that Awakening 3. Some costumes, for example, like, again, I'll use Festive Gale as an example. She's excellent at Awakening 0, meaning you just pulled 1 copy of her. On the inverse of that, you have Festive Noel, which doesn't really fully unlock until Awakening 3, so you need 4 copies of her to really unlock her damage potential. That's the difference right there. One is very easy and very free to play accessible. The other requires significantly more investment to get into. So this is something to consider when chasing. I would say a better option for someone who's either light into the game or just getting into it or just trying to kind of understand things and feel things out, but they need a dark damage specialist. Again, the survey banner is a thing right now. Get Yuzuki. Get Celebratory Yuzuki. He is excellent at Awakening 0. He has that 50% pursuit damage buff at Awakening 0. He's awesome, okay? So moving on. Oh yeah, character skill. So this is the first factor to consider. You want a character skill that is typically for a damage dealer, you want it to be 4 or 5 hit. Now 5 hit is the top end right now. That may change at some point, but right now 5 hit is the top end, with 4 hit typically being reserved to dark or non-element specific units like alternate 2B. So you want a high damage multiplier and you want a lot of hits, and that's going to increase the overall damage that they do. These character skills do significantly more damage than anything else in the game. So the first thing you're going to be looking for when you're looking for a damage dealer, the number of hits in a character skill and the multiplier on that character skill. Make sure you got that there. And again, the passives, you want something that gives them a big damage steroid, like what I said with Yuzuki, a pursuit bonus. When he's using a dark weapon, he gets that void pursuit, and that increases his damage by 50%. Those are the kind of things you really want to be looking for in those passives for the DPS. Alrighty, and then everything else, for example, let's talk about a support unit. Well, Summer Yuri, she'll come back at some point, but she's gone now. But Summer Yuri, one of the things that made her so impressive is that she has a team-wide Indomitable effect, which for a certain number of actions reduces the damage that your whole team receives. That's huge for survivability. It cuts way down on the amount of incoming damage at the beginning of every wave of a battle, and that's passively happening. And then her character skill does that again, as well as giving your team additional hit points and giving your team additional time defense. Excellent, excellent character. You're looking for things like this in a support character, heal characters, anything like this. You want them to benefit the whole team because they're typically not doing damage for themselves. They're enabling your damage dealer to do more damage, and they're keeping your damage dealer alive. That's what you look for in a support. So look for those team passives, those excellent team passives. And there is, by the way, no single best costume. This is why I don't really believe in tier lists. So when you're looking at a tier list, I'm sorry, it changes every day and it changes every time a new costume is released. It's better to look at archetypes. It's better to look at what types of roles characters play, what a good, well-flushed team is, and what you have to do to get there. So now that we've talked about that was the team building portion. Now, let's talk about increasing power. So the first way to increase power is rank bonuses. These come with the character. You don't have to do anything to get them aside from running the character in your party a certain number of battles. It's a fixed number of battles, and it is added after the fact. It's not added to the base stats of your character. This is an important distinction, by the way. Moving through, there's only one buff that is applied to each of your costumes/characters that actually applies to the base stats, and that's the exalting. Everything else is added after the fact. So this is an important thing because if it's applied to the base stats, then everything else scales off of it. That's why exalting a character from level 90 to level 100 is so powerful, because it increases the top end of your base stats. So everything else that scales off of that scales off of the added effect from the exalt. That's important. That is a very important distinction why exalt is so powerful. All you have to do is look down there at the bottom, and you see on your costume screen, you can see what your rank bonuses are. They're very marginal. It was the first bonus that we got when the game came out, so it's very small. The next thing we get are remnants, and these can be purchased from the shop with mama medals. And these, you basically get the mama medals by completing specific thresholds in limited events, doing monthly missions, things like this. They're really easy to get a hold of, and we easily can get a hold of, I think, 3,000 plus per month, which means that we can pick up 2 remnants per month. Now, remnants add flat stats based off of weapon type, characters with weapon types based off of specific characters. I just picked up the one for Noel and Argo because I just got Festive Noel up to Awakening 3, and so I figured, you know what, I might as well just increase your stats a little bit more by getting this remnant. You purchase them from the exchange shop, you apply them. They don't apply to the base stats, they apply after the fact, okay? So good things to pick up. They add a little bit of extra stats to everything. Now, the Mythic Slab is one that's been around for a very long time, but a lot of us have taken a while to fill this sucker out because there's a lot of work that goes into a Mythic Slab. So let's go ahead and talk about this. What are the top end bonuses that you can get from the Mythic Slab? Well, first of all, they're not being applied to your base stats, but you're getting a lot from them. Hit points, 101,600. Attack, 7,620. Defense, 6,750. That is a lot of stats, okay? And it's per character, it's not per costume. So you do it for one character, and then all of the costumes for that character benefit from it. It also, in addition to that, increases your chance of auto attacks on chain, or chaining on auto attacks for your 3 and 4 and 5 hits by a small percentage. It also increases the amount of stats that you get from equipping your elemental specific weapons. So dark, light, wind, fire, water. Each of those, once you have it fully flushed out, will give you up to a 9% bonus from those stats that are on the weapon. It's a small increase, but it's something. And that's a small increase, by the way, in addition to the 100,000 HP and everything else. So it's a lot there. Now, in addition to this, you're also getting a boon, which is up to 9%. So each element gets a 9% additive damage increase, which is very powerful. So the Mythic Slab board, no joke, super powerful. It was at the point that it was released a tremendous upgrade in the amount of power that we were able to dish out. But it is also standing beside other enhancements that we've gotten. It's still one of the most impactful though. Now the next one we've got is Awakenings. This is the one that sticks in some people's craws because it's the only feature within the game, aside from actually pulling the costumes and weapons, that is really not very free to play friendly. Because again, as I said before, you need up to 6 copies of a costume to fully unlock the debris from a character costume. That's a lot of pulls, and that's a lot of luck if you pull that off, or a lot of cha-ching, cha-ching. So the point is that the best costumes are the ones that you can get a single copy of that are basically fully unlocked at Awakening 0, and you can just go to town with them. Summer Yuri was a great example of this. The festive units accepting Festive Noel are also excellent examples of this. And so when you're looking at costumes, you really want to get the costumes because, again, The Awakening 1, 2, and 4, which increases your stats by up to 30%, those are stats that are being added after the base stats. It is an increase. It is a good increase, but it is not a 30% increase to your base stats. That would be insane if that was the case, because again, everything's scaling off of that, but it comes afterwards. So it isn't quite as impactful. Point being, it's good, but not worth chasing. Awakening 3, if you need it, is really what you want to be going for. This added also, the other thing you want to be looking for with Awakenings is not just the power to the character, like for example, it increases the amount of damage they do, but for example, a team buff. A great example of this back in the day was Fabled Saryu from the Sinnoh Alice collaboration. Okay, now let's talk about the next part. Exalt. This is the one I already mentioned before, but let's go ahead and dive into it again. It raises the level cap 10 levels. So for your 2 stars, your 3 stars, and your 4 stars, each of those has a different level cap, the 4 stars being 90, being raised to 100 with the Exalt. Obviously, it increases all of the stats, and that scales, everything else scales off of that. That's basically Exalt in a nutshell. Now, how do we get our characters exalted? This is a big question I've seen pop up. Well, you have to, for the most part, complete the Fate Board challenges. For some newer accounts, this is very difficult to do. They've made it a little easier for the first 10 levels, but it's still difficult. It's still some of the most challenging content in the game. And so when every 5 levels you complete, you get what's called Verse of Truth, an item, and you need 5 of them to fully exalt a character, not a costume, a character. So for every character you exalt, every costume for that character will benefit from exalting. That's the long short on Exalt. Now, the other thing is that we are getting Verse of Truth now that Fate Board is almost done. Again, I believe that it's almost done. But there's a whole lot of costumes that we have not unlocked yet, that we haven't exalted yet. And so they're going to be allowing Verse of Truth to trickle out slowly over time since Fate Board is mostly completed. So don't fret on that, it will come over time. Now, let's talk a little bit about Karma. This is the hot ticket item right now because my goodness, Karma's big, okay? I've seen some people poo-pooing on it. I've seen some people celebrating it. I'm just gonna go on the record here and say Karma is really, really big. And let's go ahead and dive into why. It's costume specific, okay? So this is an important distinction. You're gonna need to do a lot of Karma because you got a lot of costumes. So keep that in mind. Each of our Karma slots, and we get 3 of them, has a choice of 5 unique attributes. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this here real quickly. First of all, I'm going to go into my menu and I'm going to sort by Karma rank. Now, what I can do is I can select all there, boom, boom, or I can just turn off no Karma. Now, if I select all, for example, it brings up my entire roster of my costumes. But if I go back over here to sort and I just scroll down to Karma, and there we go, hold on. I go over here to my filter and then I say no Karma and turn it off. There we go. These are the only costumes in the game right now that have Karma unlocked. Okay, so it's not very many for right now. We'll get into that. And as time goes on, more and more will be unlocked. Let's go over here to our Festive Captain and let's go to the Karma tab. Okay, you can see I've already unlocked all 3 slots of his Karma. So what does this look like? Well, first of all, this is a support character. So if we go to Karma effects, you can see that we can look at our different slots here. And each of these has what abilities you can roll. This is something I recommend checking before you go to roll Karma on any costume because it'll give you an idea of what you're chasing. There are 3 tiers of Karma. There's the bad, the good, and the great. And the bad isn't bad. I say that as more of a little tongue-in-cheek. It's nothing about Karma is bad. It's all very good. So if we look at our Karma 1, since this is a support character, we're gonna have support-focused abilities like HP and defense, okay? And agility. The next one is going to be damage up when we got Bold Vigor there, okay? And we've got recovery. We've got recovery over time. We've got defense up, okay? And then the last one that we've got here is going to be, this is the same by the way, this is shared across the board for all characters. So slot 3 is universal. Reduces likelihood of being affected by poison, reduces likelihood of being affected by blind, it's very good. Damage reduced by 8% 3 times at the start of a wave. Now this is going to increase more, by the way, with the non-welfare units. The welfare units basically get some of these things cut in half. Damage taken down based off the element that the costume is. Okay, so now we're looking at a support character. Let's go back out of here and look at an attacking character. And again, I just got my lovely Lady Festive Noel. And let's take a look at her karma effects. Now this is very impressive. Attack up, agility up, attack up, crit rate up, attack up, crit damage up. I think I'm always gonna go for crit rate up. And this is one of those kinds of things that you just, even for like, you've got an agility sniper right here, agility up and crit damage up. I mean, good golly, that's powerful. So that's slot 1 on an attacker. Let's look at slot 2. This is where things get really interesting, at least for me personally. You have 3 20% damage multipliers. These are multipliers. Baby, these are multipliers. This is huge, okay? This is the kind of stuff that you would chase 4 copies of a costume to get. And it's in karma for free. You just gotta farm it out. This is why I'm saying this is so powerful. Damage up by 20% when HP is over. 70%, you got your bold vigor, you got your cage vigor, and you got your pursuit, which is most of the time gonna be my go-to. In the case of, say, an arena sniper, you go for the bold vigor, but most of the time you're going to be going for pursuit because it's the easiest condition to meet. All you have to do is have a chain built up, a small chain, and you're doing increased damage. Okay, there's also character skill cooldown and weapon skill cooldown in there. So in some situations, that actually may be a better option. Karma 3, this is it right here, 60%, 60%. Light damage taken down by 8%, really good stuff, okay? So I am not rolling karma on any of my costumes right now, except for the one that I have for free, which is Festive Griff. And the reason for that is because ideally, I would like to apply karma to a character that I'm gonna use more often than not. And when I start getting flush with the karma stones, then I'll go ahead and apply it to my other costumes. Or maybe I'm feeling behind the gun on something and it's just, it's a challenge, it's just killing me and I just need a little bit of extra karma to eke out that win. That's maybe kind of when I'm gonna be going for it, but that's just my own personal experience there. And so what we have with karma here, and I'm gonna show you the system and how it works. Okay, so I've got these rolls already done out. The only one I'm not really thrilled with on this one, and the lowest rarity, is my Karma 2. So I select it and it shows me what mats I need, okay? This is a lot actually when you really consider it. But you need, let me see here, 300 XL character enhancements, 100 XL weapon enhancements, 50 small slabs, 10 medium slabs, and 1 gem of the appropriate element. That's a lot. Let's go ahead and try some Karma Flux and see what happens. Boom. Okay, Karma Flux happens here, and what do we get? Okay, not interested. So I'm gonna cancel that. It's gonna prompt me to roll again, and basically you can just keep adding to it, but it gives you, and this was the concern that I originally had with Karma, is that it wouldn't give you a chance to choose the new ability or keep the old ability. It does, thank goodness, so this is great. Cancel again. Let's do one more just for kicks and giggles, but you can see that they're not going to give you the rarest ability right off the bat, and it is expensive to re-roll. So what you're going to be doing with this, no, I'm just going to leave that there. Okay, well that gives us an idea of what karma looks like. So basically, I wouldn't recommend blowing all your resources right away on any specific costume. You're going to be just fine with getting the 2 or 3 star rarity on these guys because, and I would caution against rolling the perfect rolls right off the bat. You're going to be wanting to taking an inventory of what you have, and you're going to want to be really diving into to finishing out these events, because now these events, because there is a whole bunch of extra goodies that we absolutely need now, including things that we didn't think we needed a few weeks ago. These things, you're gonna be wanting to farm these things out. So before you really dive into fully karma unlocking and exploding any specific costume, just remember you probably have another 50 costumes you need to do it to. So be very, very choosy with how many of your resources you use. Moving on from that, where's the next source of power that we get? Companions. Companions offer a moderate increase to stats as well as elemental bonuses to defense or damage. Sometimes you have a companion which offers a 20% increase defense against incoming fire damage, like the Mama companion we just got. Sometimes they offer a 20% increase to the damage that you're dealing with your chosen element. Oftentimes they have a really unique ability like a 40% heal or a burn effect or increased attack or decreased defense, things like this. But you don't sleep on your companions. Your companions are incredibly important. They offer a moderate stat bonus, but what's most important about them is they either offer increased survivability or they offer increased damage. When going into a given challenge, typically what you want to do is you want to increase the defensibility of your team against my dog's underneath my desk making noise, so apologies for that. You want to increase the amount of damage that you're doing with your chosen element. You want to decrease the amount of damage that's coming to you from the enemy. And then the third companion can be whatever you need, whether it be a heal, decreased defense, whatever. So that's the kind of way you look at companions, but don't sleep on them. The way you get their materials is by farming out the limited events, but also the easiest way to get a hold of their materials is typically by going to the story or other daily missions. They're really easy to get a hold of, and they don't take a whole lot of time to unlock. Once you unlock them, you'll be grateful that you did. The next source of power, debris. We obtain these by awakening a costume to level 5. Each costume has its own debris. Some are really good, some are really not, so be choosy about that. The free costumes, or not the free costumes, well, we do have free costumes. So we got our 3-star costumes, we got our 2-star costumes, and then we got our welfare costumes that come with events. These guys, you should be able to unlock the debris within the event duration or anything along those lines. And so what this means is that you'll have a whole bunch of free debris very soon that you can use. And they're not going to be great, but they're going to offer a small stat bump or maybe give you an added ability or something else. Some of the best ones are, for example, again, Summer Yuri, we got a Indomitable effect, which decreases the amount of damage based off the debris. And then you add that to everything else that you got going on, and whoever is equipped with that debris is taking significantly less damage. Another really great one is Bold Vigor. That one came from Yuletide Griff. And it was, if your HP was over 70%, then you do 20% more damage. That's a multiplier of 20% more damage. And by the way, people were chasing, I'm gonna put this in perspective here. People were absolutely wailing on Yuletide Griff to get that debris. We have that for free with Karma. Just let that sink in, okay? So again, debris offers a wide range of effects. Some of them are team buffs, most of them are individual buffs. Some increase survivability, others increase the damage output, etc., etc. Don't sleep on debris, they're awesome. But they are also a small increase compared to a lot of the other things we're talking about. Now let's dive into weapons here real quickly. Primary weapon, there's a stat breakdown for weapons, and weapons have a stat line attached to them. They have the HP, they have the attack, and they have the defense. You can see those numbers as you enhance them, awaken them, and everything else, and max them out. Then you can see the true unlocked capacity of these weapons. There's a few ways to math this out. So primary weapons, if proficient, is a 100% stat added to the costume that it's equipped to. So if you have a spear user, and you equip them with a spear in their main hand, they are going to fully benefit from all of the stats of that spear. If it's a spear user and you equip a gun with them, then they're only going to benefit from 50% of the stats because it's a non-proficient weapon. The same thing goes for the secondary slots, except the secondary slots start at 50%. So slots 2 and 3, your secondary slots, you only gain 50% of the stats from them if they are proficient weapons. But if they are not proficient weapons, then you only gain 25% of them. This increases the importance, just from purely a stat line value, of increasing as many proficient type weapons on a costume as possible. But oftentimes there will be benefits, for example, like Bold Vigor or Caged Vigor or any other number of things, to where the stats themselves, you may see the stat line decrease on your character sheet, but you'll see a 20% or a 30% increased damage when HP is over 70%. Trust me, losing some stats but picking up an extra 30% multiplier on the back end is way more important. So this is the kind of thing you need to be considering when equipping weapons and sub-weapons and everything else. Some weapons are great sub-weapons and terrible primary weapons because Every weapon that you should be using should be serving a purpose. Your abilities come from the weapons as well as your damage. So for your DPS, you want a weapon that has a very chunky chain modifier. EX weapons are some of the best for this, and they're one of the best examples for this because they're free within the game. But the other thing that we need to consider is how many hits are in that. So another thing that makes the EX weapons so good is that they are typically a 5-hit combo on one of the abilities with a 100% multiplier. That's a big damage. Most other weapons range anywhere from 35 to 85%. And that just puts it in perspective, and not always 5 hits. So consider that for your primary DPS. And the other thing with the weapons is your support characters, you'll be getting heals out of the weapons, you'll be getting defense up or attack down. Another question I saw on Reddit was, which is better, attack down on the enemy or defense up on your own team? Well, why not both? But it's different and it changes based off of situations. Oh my gosh, my dog is gonna freak out because my family just got home. Let him out, get out, go, close the door, love you, baby. All right, trying to squeeze this in. Okay. And so what's going to happen is that you want your supporting characters to be decreasing the amount of incoming damage, increasing your team's survivability, or increasing the amount of damage your team is doing, et cetera, et cetera. This can all come from the weapons as well. So be aware of that. Be aware of which weapons do what. They don't always have to do damage, but if they add to a factor of the fight, then that's important. Okay. Another thing to consider with weapons is that you want to look at what their passives are. And so, for example, I mentioned the Bold Vigor. Another really good one is Pursuit. Pursuit is really easy to get and it is very effective. And so if you, for example, have a weapon in a passive that may not have great stats, may not have a great ability 1, ability 2, but it has Bold Vigor and Pursuit, or it has, no weapon has that, but let's say it has Whirlwind Boon and Pursuit. That's an excellent weapon, for example. So things like this, you want to be paying attention to what passives your weapons have, not just how much damage they do. The only thing that counts about that is the primary slot, and then everything else, you're really focusing on the passes and the raw stat lines. Ziggy from the future, and I just realized that I forgot to read my notes and explain what the difference between an additive multiplier and a multiplicative multiplier is. The difference is that something like your Cage, your Bold, or Pursuit buffs are going to be multiplied by each other. So that's going to be 1.3 times 1.3 times 1.3. If it's an additive bonus, like from a Boon passive buff, it's going to be 1.3 plus 1.3 plus 1.3. That's if it's a 30% bonus for both respectively. That's what that 1.3 comes from. And so that's only going to equal 1.9. And so basically you can see there's a significant difference between something that's multiplying against itself versus something that is only adding to. And that's why your Bold Vigor, your Cage Vigor, and your Pursuit, and also, by the way, a newer effect, your multiplier by crit damage, are so powerful because these are things that are all multiplying against each other, while your boons are very safe, they're always active, but they're not giving you quite as much damage output. Okay, and don't forget, by the way, and I've mentioned this many times, but it bears repeating, all damage in the game is scaled off of the weapon modifiers. Now there's things added to it after the fact and before and everything else, but everything scales off of that weapon damage modifier. So having a chunky attack and having a chunky damage modifier on your weapon goes a long way when you're trying to do damage. So bear that in mind. And again, that's why EX weapons are some of the best. Okay, now here's another thing. This is worth noting. Don't fret over not being able to Black Pearl all of your weapons. Really don't. If you get a weapon up to level 70 and you just feel like you're not getting the most out of it, well, you're not, but the difference in what you get from the weapon between level 70 and level 100 really isn't that much. For example, if you're talking about the Void Boon, let's say a dark weapon, you've got Void Boon. It's 24.4% at the bottom end. At level 70, rank 11 on the Void Boon versus 15, it's 24.4% at level 70, and it's 30% at level 100, or level 90 technically. And so that's not a huge difference. That's a 5.6% difference out of 30%. It does make a difference, and all of the little things add up because the skill multipliers are lower and everything else, but it isn't worth fretting over. If you're limited on resources, getting your weapons up to level 70 should be your first priority. Don't fret. Max them out over time as you go, you'll be just fine. I still use weapons that are level 70 as support weapons and other things, and they still work great. So be forewarned. Don't fret over the black pearls. Okay, so let's take a look at this here. We have a couple different classes of weapons. First of all, we have our Dark Memory or EX weapons. These are unlocked by completing the story and character-specific missions after obtaining a 2-star weapon for that character. So completing the story, basically. They are completed by farming the Dark Memory dungeons, fully unlocking the awakening of the specific weapons, and obtaining the Dark Memory costumes from that weapon. Okay, so you get the weapon and then you get the costume that's attached to it. There is a reason to go all out, one weapon at a time, and that is because the weapons significantly increase in power at their final rank. They get one extra hit, the modifiers go up and everything else. It's a big jump. And so Dark Memory weapons, don't sleep on them. They are still to this day probably the most powerful weapons pound for pound in the game. The next weapon class is the Subjugation weapon, and these are obtained through upgrading upgraded through completing Subjugation challenges. Subjugation has it's hard to get into, it's hard to complete, and it is something that takes a long time to do, but the Subjugation weapons are some of the best in the game for different reasons than the EX weapons. They are excellent weapons. Do not sleep on them. The next thing is the Recollection of Dusk weapons. Now, this is the first step down from those first 2 tiers. They are excellent, but they're not quite as good as the first 2 that I mentioned. But they're also easier to get a hold of. All you have to do is complete the Recollections of Dusk challenges, the first ones, and then you can get the weapon fully unlocked. And so there is some difficulty in completing Recollections of Dusk, especially if you don't have a well fleshed out account, because it requires a lot of different costumes to complete, but it is possible. And so pay attention to Recollections of Dusk, excellent weapons. The next thing is the event weapons that are obtained through completing requirements and limited events. Now, these are typically the least desirable of these, because actually the least desirable weapons overall, because they're free handouts. They do some good things. Mostly we're looking at them kind of as passive stat sticks, but most of the time, most of us aren't using them. They're good sometimes for completing an event because they give you bonuses on rewards and things like that, but these are weapons that most of us sleep on, but they are there. The final category is the weapons obtained through summons. Now, there's 2 classes of weapons obtained through summons. There's the class of weapon that is obtained attached to a character. So you pull the weapon and then the character costume comes with it, is how it works. And this is NieR we're talking about. After also weapon story, weapon, everything's tied to weapons. Anyway, so you pull the weapon, you get the costume. The next is a solo weapon. And so both of these happen in the gacha. These flush out the game, and you have to have them to really excel in the game. So they are very important alongside the costumes. I know the costumes are what everybody wants, but trust me, those weapons, you need them. They add a lot of power. That was a lot. Let's dive into Memoirs. Okay, this is going to be where you pick up pretty much exclusively your crit rate, your crit damage, a huge chunk of attack, HP, and defense, and everything else. These are what really push your account to the next level. This is the single item that you can tell a veteran account to a newbie account by their Memoirs, not by how many costumes or weapons or whatnot they pulled in the gacha or anything else like that, because without the Memoirs, you cannot accomplish the content, you cannot excel in the game. You have to have the Memoirs, and most of your time farming is going to be spent in the Memoir dungeons. So you're going to be looking, for example, on your DPS, you're going to be looking for crit rate, crit damage, attack, HP, things like this, because you still want a little bit of survivability on them. And I've got a full Memoir guide on this, so I'm just going to very briefly dip into it here just to give you the Clip Notes version. And you want at least one Memoir that has crit rate as a primary. You want them with attack. Basically, what's going to happen is you're going to every 1,000 Memoirs you farm is going to be a really good Memoir kind of thing. That's how rare it is. They are very rare to get good ones. You don't want to really lock them up right away. because you want to get really good ones, and the really good ones are the ones you want to lock, because then you'll start running into inventory issues. You want to eventually be able to go back and get rid of your older memoirs you started with. Anyways, memoirs are a huge, significant part of your account's power. Do not sleep on them. You have to farm memoirs in the dungeon. I will say it again, you have to farm memoirs in the dungeon, period. Okay, that was a lot. And these are the different elements that increase and impact your account. If you check each of these boxes, if you complete each of these, and you spend time, maybe you run into a wall on one side, so you go to the next part, and you're just basically branching out, and you're accomplishing little bit by little bit, more and more every day. Maybe you get some really good memoirs over here, so it allows you to go and complete this challenge over here. Maybe you get a really good costume, or you unlock some karma over here and allows you to go back and get more over here. You're basically just gonna kind of be, it's gonna be a gradual expansion. It's like a balloon expanding in something. You're not gonna be trying to find a hole and getting to the end through one hole or another. You're just gonna be slowly expanding outwards, and your account is gonna be growing as you expand. And it's gonna be just taking one step at a time. When you run into a wall over here, don't get frustrated, come back over here, continue these challenges. When you run into a wall over there, just keep moving around, because you're steadily, slowly expanding. To the newer players and to the returning players, I would say, just have fun with it. Allow the process to take place. It's an enjoyable process. It's a great game. It's got a great story to enjoy, but also it's got great mechanics to enjoy as well. Go back to some of my Ultimate Beginner videos to learn about battle mechanics, about costumes, about daily routine and things like this. And while the daily routine has changed a little bit, the spirit of the thing still remains true. So I'm gonna leave this here. We are at a very long video right now, and I'm just gonna say I hope everybody is having a great day. I hope you guys have been able to do well on your pulls, and I hope this video helps you to better understand the fundamentals and mechanics of the game, who you should be choosing, who you should be chasing, what kind of teams you should be building, what parts of the game you should be focusing on. And I'm gonna leave it here and say, peace out, y'all. Have a good one. Bye.